MacBook prices are going absolutely insane. Like, the other day, Apple has increased the prices of a bunch of their products by around 20%, meaning that something like the new MacBook M1 Air now costs $1299. That's pretty bad news if you like money, but luckily you do not need all of that power. I'm Snowball, back on the Back Market channel, and right now one of the most sensible things you can do is just to buy a used MacBook. And you might think, oh, but I don't want some old and crusty laptop. I don't want to hear the fans that are straight out of a jet. I don't want to deal with an old processor that barely loads anything. But hear me out. This MacBook costs just a third of what a new MacBook Air would cost you, and chances are this is probably all that you need. So usually it's pretty hard to recommend old laptops because some tech just ages like milk in a car, but ever since Apple moved from Intel to their own M chips, MacBooks have aged completely differently. So when I first looked at this MacBook Air, I was ready to treat this like some old relic from the past about to cough up some dust. I was expecting it to be all crusty and depressing, but the first time I opened it, I got a sense of familiarity because the design is still premium, the screen is still really good, and just scrolling around, I genuinely felt no lag. This is one of those weird moments where I was like, how is this thing almost 6 years old? That makes absolutely no sense. This is partially because Apple has barely changed anything in those years, but can you really blame them? Like, if it's already so good, what is there to change? Anyway, take this from a guy who already owns the MacBook Pro M5, one of the best ones there is. This MacBook Air is still shockingly usable. In fact, I used this MacBook to script this entire video, and I know, scripting is not the most demanding thing, but it proves that switching between apps, having multiple Chrome tabs open, watching a YouTube video, or listening to Spotify felt almost exactly the same as any other MacBook. You have to remember that the performance isn't the only thing that matters, it's the laptop experience as a whole. I really liked using this keyboard, it's not mushy or anything, and I found this old fingerprint scanner really useful even though it's a bit small. And the screen is more than sharp enough, and maybe it's not as bright as the other MacBooks, but I sit in a dingy place anyway to preserve the battery. The brightness is something that I hate blasting anyway unless I'm connected to power. And speaking of battery, if you go to the Apple website, they quote the same battery as the newest M1 Air, meaning that as long as the battery health is fine, you're not missing out on some crazy battery health gains. So for example, in the first 2 hours of scripting, I only lost 20% of the battery. This is still an easy all-day battery, assuming you're not gonna abuse it with gaming or something. Now, if you do look at the new MacBook Air, yes, the benchmarks say it's like twice as fast, but for what? What are you gonna do that requires more power? What? Did you say edit videos and play games? Then why are you even looking at the Air models in the first place? They don't have the fans inside, so doing any real work means that eventually it's gonna throttle, and even the new MacBooks aren't invincible. And even if you are planning to do some work on it, there's the M1 Pro, which is still like half the price of the newest MacBook Air. And to prove how good it is, I literally used the M1 Pro on my main channel for the first 2 years, and the performance wasn't even an issue. It was the RAM, because I had some like really complicated timelines, so I really needed that RAM. So the point I'm trying to make is that, yeah, the M5 is a lot quicker, but that's not something that a student would even care about. It's not like they're rendering the new Marvel movie or something. They would care about the battery, which definitely isn't an issue, and the fact that the M1 is still getting the newest version of macOS. So this laptop is not abandoned, and Apple still cares about this because they know how good this thing still is, and at this point it's just iconic. 6 years later, people still use this laptop. I've seen multiple people on Reddit claiming that they still use this even for stuff like coding, and the common reason that they upgrade is A, they probably destroyed the screen, B, the battery degraded and they didn't think to just replace the battery, or C, they saw a good deal on a new MacBook, which in this economy, good luck, or D, they probably ran out of RAM or storage, which is what happened to my M1 Pro. Now, if you're planning to get the M1 Air as your main laptop, it gets kind of interesting because the MacBook Neo is not too far in price. And in the past, I have recommended that laptop because it's kind of cheap and it's just that it's a really simple choice. But that was mainly if you're buying it brand new, which right now it's gone up by $100, which is not catastrophic, but it does make me want to cry a little bit. The common issue between the M1 Air and the Neo is the RAM, because although 8GB is kind of sort of just about enough, it's not something I would buy if I had choice in the used market. At the very least, you can get the Air model with 16GB, which you can't even do that on the Neo, and even if you could do that, it would probably cost you like an extra $300, and let's be real, who would buy that? But I found another problem because I didn't realize, but you can also get the M1 Air with 128GB of storage, which I don't think that was even sold to the public. It was some education thing, but you can still buy that used, but you should avoid that like the plague, because setting up this MacBook Air from brand new, basically nothing installed, it used up like half the storage. You'll be severely handicapped, which is why at the very least, just get like 256 gigs with some external SSD or something. The RAM and storage is like one of the main reasons why people even upgrade their MacBooks, not necessarily because of the performance. So as long as you get that box checked off, there's no reason to upgrade unless you drop this thing off a cliff or something. If you think about it, Apple makes their new MacBook Airs 16GB and half a terabyte as base models these days, which is what I would call the baseline for a basic MacBook. But if you spec out the M1 Air with those specs, then the pricing can get a little bit weird, so you do have to be careful. And in case you're not a big fan of MacBooks, Back Market also has cheap Windows laptops like this HP or this laptop that has an 11th gen i5 with 16GB of RAM and costs like half of that M1 Air. How is that even possible? Or you can just get a cheap ThinkPad because these things have pretty nice build quality. Anyway, I'm not going to pretend like this thing is perfect because obviously in some ways it has to be sucky somewhere, and I think I did find a few things. So first of all, I'm not surprised that the Air model has less ports than the Pro model. That's not the big news, but at least with the new Air models, you get that MagSafe port, which at the very least frees up the ports when you charge it. So if you're planning to connect a USB hub to the M1 Air, you literally have one port remaining, and that's most likely gonna be for charging. Speaking of docking, it only supports one external display, which to be fair, if you had the money for two displays, you would probably have the MacBook Pro anyway. Also, the webcam is kinda criminal on this laptop because it's still 720p, which looks significantly worse than the M1 Pro, which already looks worse than the M5 Pro. This webcam makes me look like a chewed up and microwaved Gordon Ramsay. Show me you will it! It's not a deal breaker, but still. So now I kind of understand why this MacBook gets so much praise. It's a bit crummy when it comes to ports and the webcam. Maybe the benchmarks make it look like it's a little bit outdated, but in reality, people do not have problems with the performance. They only upgrade because they think they need to, or the battery got cooked, or they straight up broke it or something. Apple has made big improvements to performance, but for the Air models, that's not super relevant when the thing doesn't even have fans. But they haven't done that much in terms of design or even the battery, so the things that people actually care about in the Air models are not that different, and it doesn't feel like a big sacrifice if you go for the older model. And that's why I think that this M1 makes so much sense right now. Just maybe don't go for the absolute cheapest one, get some more storage, maybe even more RAM, check the battery health, and don't be surprised if you also look like a microwaved Gordon Ramsay. So if you want to get one of these right now, or any of those Windows laptops that I mentioned, I'm gonna leave some links down below, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.